I was already critiqued on my bell ringing. They said, hit the heck out of it. So we hit the heck out of it today. So thank you everybody for coming to the Rotary Club of Kerrville, our noon group. We have a great program today. So if we could all silence our cell phones, but as you do so, please check in on Facebook and let the world know where we're at and what we're doing today. So not only do I get to come up and conduct y'all's meeting today for you, but I was also called this morning and said, hey, we're in the H's, so will you pray? So if you would, please bow with me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today to thank you for the meal that's bestowed upon us. We thank you for time with friends and families. Please watch over our Rotarians and what we do on a daily and weekly basis. Watch over our projects. Lord, most importantly, please watch over our community. Watch over our responders. Watch over our fire, law, EMS, and military. Lord, just thank you for the rain that we've been receiving. Lead us in your way, guide us as a Rotarians. And we ask this in your holy and heavenly name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will not forget George Eichner this week, so we're going to have a song.
You know, with our speaker, there's just a whole host of things that we could have sung about, and probably half of them we got in trouble. So we are going to sing about Andrew. Hopefully he's on the net here. And it's stealing the same melody from Dave Rittenhouse's song last week. Here's Andrew's song. Ta-da! From the capital of our great state to the Kerrville Rotary Club comes our state rep Andrew Murr to tell us what is happening in those hallowed halls where discontent and emotions are on high. We are glad to have a man with sense in the middle of the fray. All right.
Thank you, George. Please be seated.
Know me, I'm Kelly Early. I'm District Director for Andrew Murr, and I'm happy to be here today to introduce him. Representative Murr was first elected in 2014 to represent District 53 in the Texas House of Representatives.
Text herself, she's muted.
Take off mute.
Are they ready for them to speak?
Yes, so try unmuting yourself.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm unmuted, but everyone else is muted, so I can't hear anything that anyone is saying at the meeting. So I saw Kelly talk, and I'm very grateful for all the kind words that she did express, but I do not know what they said. And I'm guessing if somebody gives me a thumbs up, I think I'm up. Is that correct? All right. Well, then let me begin. We're doing this first?
Yep.
So before we go any further, I want to virtually honor Charlie McIlvain for both his service to the community of Kerrville and to the state of Texas. On January 15th, 2021, Charlie retired as president and CEO of the Kerrville Convention and Visitors Bureau. In his tenure, Charlie has branded Kerrville as the capital of the Texas Hill Country and has boosted the city's economy and tourism. The residents of Kerrville and Kerr County have greatly benefited from his vision, commitment, and expertise, and he may indeed reflect with pride on his many years of achievements. Please join me today in thanking Charlie for his service and wishing him well in his next adventure in life. That being said, I think what I want to do is segue into a PowerPoint presentation that I have put together for you. I like to kill y'all with too many words, and so we're not going to do every slide, but I try to deliver as much information as I can to folks. And so my next question is, can you give me a thumbs up? Because I see that the Kroc Center podium is still muted and the Rotary Club camera is still muted. Do you have the PowerPoint where it is visible to folks that are there? Okay. Just a second while we click some things, and we are sharing a screen now. Now are you able to see anything?
We are good, sir.
Oh, good. All right. I heard voices, so they're not all in my head. Fantastic. We will proceed. So starting you today, what I had intended to do was to be there in person today to deliver to you sort of a legislative update, as we all will recall. And we remember from both junior high and high school, the Texas legislature is intended to be a citizen legislature and not meet all the time. So we meet for 140 days every 2 years. And we do that in the odd years. So from January to the end of May this year, we saw a legislative session. And I want to hit a few high points about that, and then also cover today about what currently is going on in Austin, so that you're up to speed on some of the topics that you may read about in your newspaper. So before you have a bunch of numbers that show the amount of bills that were introduced and have been passed by the Texas House and the Texas Senate. As you can see over on the far right-hand side, over 10,000 pieces of legislation were filed, and a passage rate was substantially high for coming out of both a pandemic. So we began in the auspices of a pandemic with a lot of restrictions in place on the ability to conduct business and do and see things, as well as the winter storm that we all experienced and suffered through in February. So having those challenges, you can see that the legislature was still able to do some things. Now, whether or not those things were good, that's for you to determine. But let's talk about a few of the issues that were tackled during the session. At the beginning of the session, Governor Abbott declared numerous emergency items. Those are topics that he chooses to highlight and put a lot of emphasis on publicly at the beginning of each session. In addition to that, whenever the governor declares an emergency item, it actually greases the wheels so that we can take up and consider legislation sooner than the constitutional requirements mandate for us to delay. So for the first 60 days of session, you're not allowed to take up a bill unless the governor here has declared it to be something that's important enough to hear early on. Amongst those include broadband for Texans. We all live in rural Texas, and we're grateful for the fact that we get to wake up every day and see the hill country. But that being said, just like many of you, I don't enjoy the ability to have broadband internet access. I live in the country. And so one of the big steps that was taken by the state is to create the broadband development office within the controller's office. The essence of that is the state had to have an organizational framework in place to receive federal funds so that we could bring broadband to rural areas and underserved areas. We saw this during the pandemic whenever school kids were trying to do lessons remotely, and we found that in many places it was a limitation for a lot of folks involved. And so pretty excited about the opportunity, but we all understand this is going to be a long, slow march ahead, but the framework is now in place to move forward. A couple other things that you talked about and that you saw on the list from the governor, they had topics about defunding the police. That typically was limited to large urban areas, so that doesn't apply to Kerrville. You also saw that some civil liability protections were put in place for pandemic issues, and that reflects importantly on businesses for the steps they took for their employees and their customers. We all remember what happened in February. We don't want it to happen again. We don't want it to happen during the summertime or the wintertime. Several bills were passed that dealt with ERCOT, which is our framework for how we manage the utility grid in the state of Texas. You can see on this slide here, this particular bill dealt with the requirements for those that serve on its board, as well as the selection process. In addition, we require additional rules to prevent rolling blackouts, fines for utilities that are not prepared for severe weather events. This is important, created a statewide power outage alert system so that utilities can quickly react. We found that a lack of knowledge created a lack of preparedness and a lack of response. Amongst other things, at the end of the slide there, it's a lot of words. The Texas Electricity Supply Chain Security and Mapping Committee. What that really means, and you all heard some stories, whenever certain parts of the system were shut down, those parts were integral to allowing for continued use of things like natural gas pipelines, et cetera. And so when they were disrupted, it caused a cascade effect. This committee will actually go out there and find those infrastructure locations to ensure that they never get shut down again. In addition, we saw numerous other bills about the winter storm. I throw these on the screen just so that you're aware of the fact that they exist. But given our limited time frame today, I want to move on to some other relevant topics. And I'm sure if you have questions, y'all can call me. And you can also, Kelly can put you in touch with me and we can visit as little or as much as we want to about any topic you see. At the end of the session, there were several items on the governor's list that did not pass, including election integrity and bail reform. So consequently, the governor called a special session. So just a historical context, in Texas, under the Texas Constitution, only the governor can initiate a meeting of the legislature that doesn't occur during what we call the regular session, which is the every two-year period. When the governor does that, the governor unilaterally gets to pick what the issues of the day will be, and each special session lasts for only 30 days. But the governor can continue to call special session after special session. Historically, Governor Rick Perry called 12 special sessions over his tenure as governor. And in fact, Bill Clements called special sessions that spanned, months and months while they were trying to deal with school funding back during his tenure. And so my point being is the governor clearly drives what the topics are of the day. Governor Abbott called a special session on July 8th and named everything listed on this chart as topics for the legislature to work on, including bail reform and election integrity, two topics that he had identified that did not pass during the regular session. In there, you'll also see some other topics and some funding, including property tax and foster care system funding. A 13th check refers to an additional paycheck for retired teachers. What you will find is monies didn't necessarily exist in those accounts according to the controller earlier in the year, but by the time we got to the summertime, the controller said that the state's economy is doing well enough that there was sufficient funds to do such a thing as an additional paycheck for retired teachers. Now, I, on the other hand, would also prefer a cost of living adjustment for those teachers, and I do think the funding is there to do it if it's done carefully. What we experienced after a week of the special session, and this is a topic that you've read about in your newspaper, is that a quorum break occurred. And so it's only the 5th time in history that that has happened. The Texas Constitution actually sets out that you have to have a 2/3 majority of the Texas House present in order to conduct business. It's similar in concept to making sure that all the city council members are present or a majority of your school board's present in order to take action. Because the Texas Constitution says you have to have 2/3, that's 100 out of 150 House members. So on the second week of the special session, 59 House Democrats, so the Texas House has 83 Republicans and 67 Democrats. So at least 59 Democrats chose to depart, leave the Capitol, and most of them left the state of Texas in order to deny the quorum. It's almost like a filibuster. So no further business can occur in the House. And so giving you information that's nonpartisan, what that means is the House can't meet to debate legislation on the floor. The committees of the House are unable to meet because there's a lack of a quorum. And so no other business can occur. The only responses that are available once a quorum break occurs is upon motion, the speaker can put a call on the House, and that says literally the sergeant at arms calls the members to please come to the floor. And then separately, the speaker can instruct that the sergeant at arms, in coordination with law enforcement, can go and gather up individuals and physically bring them to the Capitol so that business can be conducted. You will hear it termed as an arrest, but in Texas law, it is not a criminal arrest. It would be a civil arrest. And so there is a big distinction there. No one's placed in handcuffs. They don't go and take them down and magistrate them or take their picture or anything like the sort. Instead, if they are located, then they are taken to the House floor so that they can register that they are present. Being that this is the 5th time in Texas history that this occurred, we are still waiting for the quorum to occur. And I can answer questions later or talk more about that, but that is the news, the hot topic of the day. Here is real quick an overview of the historical perspective of the lack of a quorum and how it's been used as a tool for political purpose. In 1979, 12 senators left the Senate chamber for 4 hours. Then we saw in 2003, both House members left the state of Texas and senators separately left the state of Texas. Now, once you leave the state of Texas, the authority to arrest and bring them back doesn't cross state lines. And so there's a reason why they went to Ardmore, Oklahoma, and Albuquerque, New Mexico during that time. That had to do with redistricting that was occurring mid-session. And then the other 2 that you see there have happened in the last couple of months. And so happy to speak more to that later, but let's touch upon the state budget. Our state budget is enormous. It is a 2-year or a biennial budget. And as you can see on the screen, it's a pie chart, and I did that for you specifically. There's $248 billion in the state budget. And as you can see, the largest pieces of the pie go to public education and higher education and health and human services, which includes everything from CHIPS, Medicare, and Medicaid. A lot of that is federal dollars for those purposes that are sent to the state to be administered through those programs. The rest of the budget, as you can see, is really smaller pieces of the pie, and we often overlook that fact. Specifically for the budget breakdown, it provides almost $900 million to maintain current health insurance premiums for retired teachers through TRS care, and it increases the state's contribution rates to the teacher retirement system. Specifically, you may have heard about in Mason County, right down the road, back in February, an arsonist firebombed the courthouse. The man broke into the courthouse, poured gasoline through the courtroom, and lit the courthouse on fire. We believe the purpose of that was so that he did not have to have court the next day. He purposefully attacked the judiciary in order to stop court from happening. Surprise, court still occurred the very next day. So the state of Texas, in an effort to make sure that people understand that you can't attack a branch of government and shut it down, has actually put $6 million towards the $16 million that Mason County will need to rebuild its courthouse. And just to point out, that courthouse contains all county offices except the sheriff's office. So when we talk about it, it's not just for court. It includes the treasurer, the JP, the county judge and commissioners, the clerk's office, and the county attorney's office. $400 million was increased in the state budget for our psychiatric hospital system. A portion of that went to Kerrville State Hospital, which will add new maximum security beds, and that is scheduled to open in November. So that's both a professional and an employment-related boon for Kerr County. More than $1 billion is being spent in our current biennium budget for border security. Look, I talk daily to constituents, some of which are my personal neighbors. I live on the Rock Springs Highway south of Junction, and I see firsthand some of the challenges that we have with folks crossing the border, with the cartels actually engaging in human smuggling operations. I've talked to law enforcement, I've talked to our DAs, and I understand the pressure points that we have there. Texas cannot solve all those problems, but we can make sure that we do put monies towards some of the efforts that law enforcement and our prosecutors are going through to try to deal with some of the outcomes of that. When we talk a little bit about health and healthcare, we saw HB4, which expands telemedicine services, which is very important for where we live. I look around in our counties, and for example, we don't have a lot of psychiatrists that live in Kerrville or Junction or Mason or other places. But if you have a child, a student, or someone who needs those services, we've actually tried to design telemedicine framework that puts that in place so it connects you with the professionals that you or your friends and loved ones need. We saw the same done with teledentistry. And I can tell you, we all have the problems, and you've experienced it firsthand, where all of a sudden today you're fine and tomorrow you need a dentist, and it happens. And so there is certainly a new opportunity there to see dental specialists from urban areas that provide services in rural Texas. I'm gonna breeze through some of the other bills that we've got so that I don't run out of time, because I'm conscientious of your time today. Real quick, some important legislation that we saw has to do with performance standards for schools that are at risk of being placed in a conservatorship by the state, to ensure that children don't fall further behind due to the pandemic implications that they had. We also saw a bill that no one talks about, SB 1336, which actually limits the growth of state spending in Texas. And what it does is it says the state legislature can't reach into the pockets of taxpayers and spend extra money that we don't have. And I think that that's a good planning tool. We already have it in the state constitution that the Texas budget has to be balanced. But sometimes there are some mechanisms that lawmakers can use to get around that. And we wanted to make sure that they were making smart decisions and not kicking anything down the road that hurts us in a future generation. A couple other topics, and then I will segue into other interesting topics that I can talk about. We saw an eminent domain reform bill pass. It is not as strong for property rights as all property rights owners would like, but it did take some steps forward. So if you have a pipeline that you've dealt with, or you've watched neighbors deal with a power line coming through their property, it does add some extra protections in place, but it doesn't stop it, unfortunately. House Bill 103 establishes a Texas active shooter alert system. We all use technology now. Just like you, I have my cell phone and I get calls and texts on a regular basis. That's important for us to know if something was going on in town. We saw that in Odessa and the shootings in El Paso. And so that's why you see a bill with the Texas Active Shooter Alert System there, because the technology is available. We want to make sure it's available to everyone. And then last but not least, don't forget, everybody loved margaritas to go. They're here to stay. And the governor signed that into law, and that is immediately effective. So we all have alcohol to go. You just got to follow the basic rules so that you're not drinking and driving. But we're very excited that we've got that. Real quick, and I see I have about 9 minutes left, just to cover a couple of topics that we worked on personally. We passed the Farm Animal Liability Act update. So 2 years ago, the Texas Supreme Court ruled that a farmer or rancher could be sued by an employee if a bull caused injury or death. And we all thought that the Farm Animal Liability Act provided protections for our farmers and ranchers. And so what we did is we set about with HB 365 to extend the liability protections that we already thought were in place, and in fact, beef it up. So I have language in there that says, if you're a farmer, it applies to farming. If you're a rancher, it applies to ranching. And the whole concept is, we understand that livestock and working livestock is an inherently dangerous activity. You shouldn't put the family farm or the family ranch at risk simply because you hire somebody to help you load livestock and take them to auction, or help you work calves, mark calves. I do it. I know a lot of my neighbors do too. And that's important for our economy. Right here in Kerrville, I had a nurse bring me a topic that was near and dear to his heart. And so we actually passed the Texas Living Organ Donor Protection Act. And all it says is that insurance companies cannot deny you health insurance or increase your premiums solely because you chose to be a living organ donor and give a kidney or another organ to a family member or a stranger. And we had experienced that occurred, and we don't want to have a policy in place that discourages folks from giving life to another person. So that's a really big deal. And so that passed and will take effect September 1. Finally, I work closely. I'm actually a member of our county historical commission in Kimball County. I take great pride in the fact that history is always a part of us and we're supposed to learn from it. Our county has a lot of historical markers. Kerr County does too. What we experienced is there wasn't a lot of teeth in the law when someone stole a medallion off a building or stole a historical marker and it was discovered in somebody's garage or house later. And so we actually passed some legislation that puts some teeth into that and lets the Attorney General go after the bad actors that vandalize and tear up markers, monuments, and medallions that the Historical Commission itself puts out there. And I think that's important. They are very expensive. Some of us have actually raised funds to put up historical markers, and they're not cheap. Finally, nearing this, we actually helped extend the farm and ranch survey. So a lot of us deal with neighbors and friends that actually get an ag exemption for their property because they're in production agriculture. There is a voluntary survey that takes place to try to set the value for that. And we found that it was a little cumbersome. And so we tried to put some new tools in place so that property owners can use the survey in a better way. And at the end of the day, hopefully that provides proper values instead of guesstimates that we see happen so frequently. Finally, real quick, and I'll end on this for today. This is a bill that I file every session. I filed it during the regular session as House Bill 59. I filed it during this current special session because property taxes are on the call and it is valid as House Bill 80. And I still propose a policy discussion of abolishing school property taxes at the local level. I do not advocate in any way for us to reduce the spending on public education. Instead, the state of Texas is constitutionally obligated to pay for a free public education for our young people, and I think it should be doing that. But you and I both know that property taxes is constantly a problem. And this chart here shows you that average property taxes across the state is over half go to schools. I would argue in Kerr County, depending on whether you live in the city or the county, it's actually much higher than that. It's 60 to 70% in most counties go to pay for public education. If the state of Texas would come up with other funding sources for that, then your property taxes would go down by more than half overnight. But we're not going to cut school funding to do that. And it's a heavy lift. It's a serious discussion that requires the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker to all be interested in that concept. Because if it was easy, if it was low-hanging fruit, we'd already have picked it by now. I continue that policy discussion to make people think, because I believe that any time that we nibble around the edges on property taxes, we're really not fixing the major problem. And the problem is we've come to rely upon them for school funding purposes too much. The state of Texas puts other money on the table, but we really put a lot of pressure on the appraisal districts to have high valuations because of school property taxes. And so that's my issue with that. And I'm not going to let that go away. I'm happy to talk about other things, but I'm going to go towards the end of my slide here. I'll leave you with this. I tell you every single time, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but as soon as they let us out, maybe I can come. Y'all all have great ideas. You saw a bill or two that already became law because one of your neighbors came to me and said, Andy, I see a problem. I think we can solve it. Don't forget to reach out. If you have an idea, call me, bring it to Kelly, and we'll sit down and talk about what we can do to repeal something to make it better, or really it might be something nobody's ever thought about before. So I put this contact information up there so that don't forget to just call me, call your congressman, call your United States senator, but we're here to help. The final thing, and I never give Kelly enough credit for that, but my staff in Austin and myself, we do a lot of work for your neighbors and your friends whenever they have questions or they need to figure out what to do with a state agency. So whether it's a child support issue, how to renew your driver's license, or to deal with a state agency, we're here to help. We're a resource. And so don't forget that. And the final thing that I'll add today is the reason that I'm stuck in Austin is because we do have this special session. The governor of Texas has announced that we will have multiple special sessions. I don't know when they'll end, but I look forward to coming to Kerrville and seeing you soon and having lunch with you at Rotary. I miss going to Rotary, and I miss it daily. So I'm excited to participate today. I'm happy to answer questions, but I know I'm almost out of time. So please call me if you have a question. I'm grateful for your time today. And y'all are muted, so I can't hear, but I'm going to pass the torch over.
Thank you, Representative Murr. We have time for some questions if you do, sir.
Yes, sir, I do.
We have any questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Tucker.
This is a burning issue. How does the new alcohol to go law square with the open container law?
The question was how does the alcohol to go law coincide with the open container law?
So my understanding is whenever you purchase alcohol to go, it has to have a lid, and then the lid has to be taped shut. And you can't have a straw in the lid. Okay?
He didn't say anything about a hole in the side of the cup, though, Bill.
That's right. That's right. It has to be taped shut, and you get to drive home and then open it. That's the plan. Other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there any updates to the gravel operations here on the Guadalupe?
Question was there any updates to the gravel operations here on the Guadalupe River?
So I also I filed legislation, which is the fourth time I've done it, to try to regulate mining and gravel quarries, especially along the riverbanks. What you find is it is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And anytime any bill is filed with that industry, they send a team of lobbyists in to try to slow it down. The fear is it doesn't matter how well we draft the language. They're scared to death that it gets to the House floor or the Senate chamber, that someone will offer a floor amendment and do some major drastic change to the industry. And when we talk about the gravel industry, we're talking about building roads, pouring concrete, building houses, all those things that we also take for granted. We did not see any legislation pass that had to do with at least thoughtful restrictions along the river, especially within the city limits. And so I will continue that work, but I can tell you it is an uphill battle dealing with multi-billion-dollar companies.
Anyone else?
Any other questions? Anything I miss?
Dave, do we have any from online?
I don't see it. Now that you said that, maybe we will.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
What's the prognosis for the return of the wandering immigrants?
Mr. Jones, I heard your question, and the answer is it is a daily check. So we all go to the House floor at 11 a.m. every day, and the speaker hits the gavel, and we say a prayer because that's the only privileged thing we're allowed to do. And we turn around and see if anybody's shown up. Beyond that, the session ends August 7th, and the governor has said he will call another special session on August 8th. So I have not heard any new information.
Yes, sir, Mr. Truitt.
Is anything discussed in the legislature in this session about interest rates of title lenders and better regulation of title lenders in the state of Texas? Like making the move to outside the city limits and other activities?
The question was there anything on the legislature to lower interest rates for title insurance? Is that correct?
Title lenders.
Title lenders.
So I'm assuming, Mr. Truitt, you mean title insurance companies?
Yes.
Yes.
No. Payday loans.
Payday lenders. Okay, yes. There were multiple pieces of legislation that were filed. I don't know that any of them got across the finish line. There are different groupings when you talk about that type of lending. We all understand banks, but there are payday lenders, and then there are other types of lenders. And so several pieces of legislation were filed. I don't know that any made it across, so I don't think anything changed. So you still see some extreme examples, and I do think that there are folks who make some bad decisions and are taken advantage of in that arena. That's my fear.
Representative Murr, we thank you for your time today. Thank you for being here. And like you said, we wish we could see you in person, but we understand that you're going through a few things here in Austin. So
If you don't mind, I'm going to come back as soon as I can. Thanks for having me.
I'm sorry, sir.
I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Wonderful. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you
All
for your
right.
time today.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, couple of things real quick. Stephanie Miller is with us. She sent me a message to ask for everybody to pray for our Rotarians and family members that are affected with COVID. So if we can just keep everybody in your thoughts and prayers for that. We talked a little bit about it last week, but she wanted to make sure that we reiterated that Donna Peterson, who is in our satellite club, but also one of your board members, got married. So she's enjoying that. So that's about all I've got to say about that. So far. So club business, please pay your invoice. I'll leave it at that this week. So foundation giving, we talked about it last week. We challenge everybody for $25 a quarter, $100 a year. So it's if Gina's not here today, but if somebody chooses to do so, Christy is here. Looks like Christy's coming up. Yeah, she'll take a check every time. And yes. The next trash pickup that Todd Odom, one of your other board members, is going to be running for us, is going to be this Saturday at Goat Creek Road. They'll meet at Tally Elementary. He normally has coffee and kolaches for everybody that's there. One of my goals was to support the UGRA. I have a tentative date for the Rotary Club of Kerrville to do a service project on Saturday, August the 28th in Lewis Hayes Park. It was available. It looked like the absolute best place to do it for recognition for Rotary. And we don't have to get in the river, and we don't have to walk across slick rocks and up and down banks, because there were some places like that, and we don't need to go down there and fall or slip or get hurt. So I will pick up all the supplies the day prior, and hopefully we have a great turnout for that. We'll send an email out to get registered for that.
What do you have to do?
Just pick up trash. UGRA actually supplies all of the supplies, the grabbers, the trash bags, the gloves, everything. And then when you get through, we'll take it over and throw it in their dumpster. So, and as they said on there, if it's full, just throw it on the side of the dumpster. So, Mr. Michael Allen, I do believe you're here. If you would come up, please, sir, we have something for you. Just pretty much it. President-elect Marta is going to present you with your Paul Harris Fellowship, sir. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Number one.
That'd be two.
Number two. Oh, plus one, I'm sorry. Yes, plus two. Plus one equals two. For his Burr Oak. Yes, that was the Ed Hamilton's deal with the oak. Yes. Rise Against Hunger. Keep throwing this out there to you. September the 18th at Schreiner University. I said last week we would, since we have a little bit of time left, President Tammy, on her last meeting, she took care of some of our locals and a couple of our Turtle Creek Fire Department, the Rotary Club of Kerrville. Thank you for your generous contribution to the Turtle Creek Fire Department. Your support will be used to help adequately equipping our fire department to future help and protect our community in our county. Terra Linda, to the members of from the members of the Terra Linda Volunteer Fire Department, we wish to thank you for your generous donation. We appreciate your support, which allows us to continue to respond to emergencies quickly, efficiently, and safely. Tammy, thank you. From the Centerpoint Volunteer Fire Department and the community we serve, we thank you for the thoughtful and kind donation. Please know that all 2020 was a hard year on all of us, and 2021 started off as the same. Know that we truly appreciate you remembering the needs of not only Centerpoint Volunteer Fire Department, but all of the volunteer fire departments, which helps this wonderful county. So, and lastly on this week is from the Hill Country Arts Foundation. Dear Rotary Club members, on behalf of the Hill Country Arts Board, staff, and members, I want to express our deep gratitudes for your donation. 2020 was a challenging year for everyone, I know, and we sure appreciate you thinking of us. We're coming back even stronger. With warm regards, Sarah. This is all part of what we do, part of the leadership and guidance that we had while Tammy was our president. Tammy, thank you again for a wonderful year. I'll ask Mr. Wendling to come up, and if he would, introduce our guests that we have with us today. Some are visiting Rotarians, and it's great to see y'all with us.
Good afternoon. Y'all know we have 9 volunteer fire departments. Y'all know that? We had 8 and Hunt was 9. First order of business, somebody in this room has a birthday today. Yeah.
Phyllis Ricks.
No. Born today. We don't know which year though. I have to ask my spy to figure that out. But the guy sitting next to me, it's a guy named Jeff Harris. It's his birthday today. Happy birthday. 1973 or 73 years old. Oh my goodness. Me? Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
And Phyllis Ricks today.
Dave, could you get the flags out for me? We need to send a message. We need to send a message, would you? Commander, send that down here. Stick to the horn, okay? Anyway. And Christmas trees. Done a superior job lighting up the city. What am I doing up here? I don't even know.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Labatt, thank you for joining our merry band. Mr. Labatt comes from the distinguished downtown San Antonio Rotary Club.
And transferring cars.
And yes, that's what it said, joining our merry band. You want to come up and do this?
Sorry, Dave. Or sorry, George.
This is like a comedy routine up here. Anyway, thank you. It's not funny. And speaking of funny, John Elliott, our Republican chairman for Kerr County. Great, glad you're here, John. Well, Chief Deputy Chris Lalonde from Kerr County Sheriff's Office is with us today. Chief, stand up so everybody can see. All right, Jason, I'm outing you, buddy. Jason Waldrop, who's a special agent with the Department of Public Safety, as I said, has a stellar career and retires at the end of the month after 27 years of keeping us safe. The next point of order is, so Jason joins the Kerr County Sheriff's Office as the new division commander, as a captain, heading the Special Operations Division August 2. So the talent just keeps rolling in. So congratulations, and everybody welcome Jason. He's going to do a great job. General Walter from Shriner University, developing at Shriner Institute, doing a great job. I know it's a struggle, but they're getting good traction now, thanks to all the hard work. Mr. Hamilton, you have a guest. Sir, Ed. I'm sorry, Ed, I gotta say it. Ed tells me that Bill is the second best realtor in Kerr County. Okay, Mike Allen, you have a guest.
Have a friend and local fellow, George Hager, Hager Construction Company.
And Kelly has two gifts.
I have Bea Pineda. She's with Senator Buckingham's office. Foster, he's here today.
Debbie Andrews, you have a guest today?
Yes, sir.
You have a guest today? Amber, you have a guest?
Thank you, Jeff. Bill, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time, and I'll say something about Bill. He loves Great Danes, or used to love Great Danes. Still do. Rescue, correct?
Correct.
He rescues Great Danes, so it's phenomenal. I've gotten to meet some of his family members before, and they are just big love bugs. So, no paid announcements this week, but next week we are going to have another great program with us again. Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and the Boys and Girls Club are going to be here to speak about mentoring. So it's a great program, something to really be involved in if you want to look at something else to do in the community. Johnny Grimes, I saw you. Oh, and then he's out. Mike Huff, are you wearing your Rotary pin today, sir?
Yes.
Come on up and get it. Welcome back, sir. I missed you. I saw a hand go up for a second. Chris, thank you. Quick paid announcement. Yes, sir. Come on.
Me, I figure when it's,
Oh, you want to come up here so they can hear you online?
oh, no, you can just repeat it. So, Murr Country Blues Rugby Club is having its first ever rugby tournament here on August 7th. It's the first Saturday in August, and we're having it at the Kerrville Sports Complex. It might be news to the DA, but that's the plan right now. So I'd like to invite everybody to come out and see the sport of rugby. We've grown. We have about 40 at-risk kids and at-risk adults as well. So come on out and check out rugby. And I need to pay some money for the meal. My wife and kids are out of town, so thank you for having me here Saturday today. Give me a proper meal. I'd like to invite everybody to satellite Rotary. We meet now the second Thursday of the month, 5:30 p.m. Look for your emails or find me. But if you need to make up for anything, just come out and check out the satellite group. We're trying to keep it rolling and get it built. So,
And y'all meet at Security State Bank
in the community room there.
in the community room. Chris is with the Satellite Club as well. So if anybody needs a makeup or just wants to attend one of their meetings,
Somehow
which-
the president satellite this year. I don't know.
so it's welcome to the club, sir. I will try to make it to one of your meetings, I promise. Chris was talking about, his paid announcement was there's a blue rugby club, and their first tournament is going to be on Saturday, August the 7th at the fields over off Holsworth. So if a bunch of at-risk children and adults that like to go around and just beat each other up. So it's I look forward to seeing Chris doing it. And no, sir, I will not join you. So, all right, with that, if there's nothing else, if y'all would, please join me with the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, fair to all concerned, will build goodwill and better friendships, beneficial to all concerned.